my name is Abdi Said and I'm a board member of the Norwegian Council for Africa. Welcome to this event, Afrika Nå event, which is arranged with the Norwegian Council for Africa and the Somali strategic partner. This event will talk about the continuous delay of the election combined with the dispute between the allied opposition group on the federal government of the country in democratic pickle. How can Somalia get out of political instability and complete parliamentary and presidential election? Where is Somalia headed after the election? How can the country get back on track and avoid the same difficulties of the election 4 years from now? Our moderator today is Sverre Tom Randøy from NRK. He was former Africa correspondent. Sverre, I give the floor to you.
Okay, thank you, friends and daughters and sons of that great country, Somalia. Before I proudly introduce our panel, some practical information. This meeting will last for approximately 1.5 hours, that is 7:30ish, something like that. And each contributor at this stage will have 10 minutes to point out a few key elements they find most interesting regarding elections in Somalia and the road ahead. Our subject tonight. They will do so from very different angles. But of course, we have to have some updating because as we are speaking, there might be an election in Somalia, right? Just in this time, this minute, in the hangar, in the compound. They will themselves have the opportunity to ask questions, and of course they have to answer mine. And at the end of the meeting, the audience will have the opportunity to ask some questions. So, in Somalia, today, we see the worst drought in 4 decades. Famine looms, according to the World Food Programme. 6 million are on the edge of starvation. The COVID-19 is another concern. Al-Shabaab, of course, continue to spread death and fear. The shadows of the Ukraine war even reach Somalia. The World Food Programme resources are affected. In this situation, Somalia has experienced a democratic deadlock. The election system does not work as intended. The president did not end his term in February 2021. And the political fights are described as all-time high. So why this delay in the election process? Then, ladies and gentlemen, the panel. Halima Ismail Ibrahim, for years a leading voice for women and the civil society and for a change in the election system. Heidi Johansen, Special Representative for Somalia from the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Mukhtar Aynashe, today a political analyst and former National Security Advisor for President Sharif. And Stig Jarle Hansen, Professor at NMBU University, an international respected expert on Islamism on the Horn of Africa, and of course, Al-Shabaab. So, we start with the honored guest taking the time to come to us tonight. Born and raised in Mogadishu, she has been a political affairs officer in UN Somalia. After more than a decade abroad, she became the chair of Somali Civil Society Coalition and deeply involved in election matters as the chair of the technical committee and now as a member of the high-level task force for Somalia's New Deal processes. We will listen carefully to what you have to say today. So please.
I'm really glad to be here this afternoon, and it's an honor to give me this opportunity. And I would like to say hi everybody who is here, and I will correct my colleague that I'm not changing to election, but I always be pioneer for women struggle, because in Somalia, first of all, Somali women are very strong women, and we are independent. And people, they may mistaken, since we are a Muslim country, that we have the same culture of Arab countries who are being Muslim. We are so different. And although lately, after the war, the influence of our Arab culture has infiltrated in our country, but still deeply, we are very strong and we fight for our rights. We have been fighting for a long time. Before 1960, women were not allowed to vote, but because of hard work of Somali women, we forced them to give us our opportunity to vote. And from there, women has been the breadwinner of Somalis. We have been rising, but this clan election, I say election, it's a clan election or political leaders election, and I think we came down because we started in 2020, we were like 4%, 2000 I say we were like 4%, 2008 it became 8%, 2012 women in the parliament became 14%, 2016 we up and we raised it and we became close to 26% in the parliament, the female parliament. But now, because everything went back, and it collapsed, and we have 19% now. So we lost a lot of seats, and our target was to get always more than 30%. But that doesn't mean that we will be quiet. We will reorganize ourselves and we will rise. And lately, I have been working with election commissions, and I'm the chair of election commission. And I have done other elections, indirect elections. In 2012, I was the chair of the technical election committee. I did the first election in Galmudug also. I was the chair of the team. And now I am the chair of election commission for almost 7 years. And we haven't done, our commission have not done the indirect election, because the election commission's mandate is to hold the federal parliamentarian election and the federal president and referendum. And our mandate is not to be part of the clan-based election. So that's why we were not involved in those elections. But we were there. We have the opportunity to observe and see what is happening. And I'm here today to respond all the questions that I can respond, and in order that you get about some knowledge what is happening. I know already you are following what is happening in Somalia, but always it's more interesting when you see someone who came inside to get some information about it. And I'm ready to do that. If I start, do we start responding what you asked, or?
No, please continue.
Yeah. Yeah. And why is the delay of elections in Somalia? It's obvious that the delay is almost now close to 2 years, and it happened for a reason. It doesn't just happen, but it happened for the reason, and the reason is Somali leaders, they look only the end of the process. They don't look how the process will go and how the process will be right or wrong. But everybody is looking that point, which is the end. Who will be the president of Somalia? So everybody wants to be involved and have his own. I'm not saying hair, because there's no hair in that decisions. And in his perspective, of having his own president. The delay, it's not caused by opposition, but it's caused by between the federal system, federal member states, and the federal Republic of Somalia. The president and the federal members, the president of the federal member states. And it is a pity that a country has 5 or 6 presidents. That's our problem, that's the delay. Some of the federal member states, they want to create their own president or to be the president. So they have to manipulate the election, they have to manipulate the rules, they have to manipulate the movements. That's why we have a delay. It is not a free election. And they are very scared about election. One of my young people was saying, and that's what I believe it all the time, it is that and they want to have indirect election. They want to elect themselves. They don't want to give the opportunity to the larger population, because if we got one person, one election, all the politicians who are there now, they would not have a chance to be re-elected. So that scare is in themselves. So they will not free and give opportunity to the larger community of Somalia. That's what
Thank you very much, very interesting. So what you say is that the delay or the resistance to change the election method, it will not happen because then the people who are elected, so to say today, will not be elected at all. Most of them. Mm-hmm. But beside that, I mean, is that only from person to person, or is it the structure? Is it the clan who decide that, or is it every person itself who decide that this new kind of election, one man, one vote, we don't want, because then I will not get that seat?
First of all, we always say it's a clan decision. The clan, it's not a clan decision. Even the clan itself, they will not get an opportunity to choose what they want. It is the leader, the political leader, who is leading that area, who take the decision. If you look now, the 17th September agreement, it says that the electoral college will be nominated or selected by the elders and the civil society. And what happened now, what we have seen, there was no an elder, there was no a civil society, only the president was taking this decision. Who will be the president, or who will not, who will be the candidate, or who will be not. And if you happen to go to the office of the president of the federal member states, there is a long line, the office of the president. And those online are the elders, the civil society, the ones who want to candidate. They were taking permission from him. He was the one who was deciding who will be the candidate or who will not be the candidate. So there's no clan decision even. It is a political decision, and the president, the vice president in that area are taking the decision. Especially the president was taking the decision. Midnight, 2 o'clock in the night, people who wants to be elected, they go in front to the president's office in order to get that paper to give permission to become a candidate. Even the 17th September agreement was not respected. So it's not a clan, it's not a civil society, it's not a people. It is the president, that president, who wants to write the name of the candidate because he is interested being a president or electing the president that he wants. The end. And today what is happening is the election of the speaker, and I hope that it will be done, because we got tired. It's almost 2 years 17 June 2020, I went in front to the parliament representing the election commission, and we gave the parliament two options. One was that we will finish the election on March 2021. We will do an E-Day election. That day we will register those who are voting and they will do the election. And 27 March, that day will be the election day, only one day. Or if you don't want the E-Day registration, then we will do the biometric election, which is we will do the voter registration and then we will do the election. And we will finalize that on August 2021. They said no, election commission is delaying the election. They want that the president stays more months, and now you see, it's almost 2 years. And the sad thing is, the structure of the Somali society is more divided. We were in big clans, now we are going deep by sub clans. The corruption became higher than before. People, they loudly saying, that candidate, how many money he has if he wants to be elected. Is he going to give me $200,000 openly, without shying? So it's not corruption now, it's ordinary life. We reach at that position.
So it can be up to 200,000?
200,000, yeah. And they
for one seat?
And the parliamentarian, they are going shopping. Today they are with Sheikh Sharif, tomorrow they are with Hassan, tonight they will be with Farmaajo. They are everywhere to collect money.
So they are not there because of the politics, they are there because of the money?
The Somali politics it's about the pocket. I want to be an MP to get money. I want to be a governor to get money. I want to be a president to get money. It's about money. There's no clear-cut policy and politics which is going.
We will come back to that for sure. We'll have another contributor, Heidi Johansen. You are special occupied with the peace and conciliation matters, but you also come with some news, even from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and from Geneva today. What can you say?
Yes, I'm based in a section called Section for Peace and Reconciliation, so that is my main kind of mandate, to see how Norway can support a peaceful development in Somalia. But of course, everything is connected to everything, and you cannot have peace if you don't have if people don't have food or water, and the politics will be a mess as long as there is a system like the one that Halima described. So of course we focus, and also in my position I focus on the whole aspect. When it comes to the drought and the humanitarian assistance, there are some news. There were a big donor conference in Geneva 2 days ago, where the donors pledged, I think, I saw some numbers, $1.4 billion to the drought on the Horn. Norway pledged 200 million Norwegian kroner. Of them, I think 80 million will go to Somalia. So, I mean, we are trying our best to support the country. But in this situation, where, as Halima described, it's not very easy to see how we can support in the most efficient way. We have invested a lot in Somalia for many years. We've been working, during the war with humanitarian organizations. The past 12 years, we have been focusing on economic reforms. We have been one of the main countries driving the process of debt relief by giving bridge loan. We have a strong peace and reconciliation focus in Somalia. And we are planning to continue a strong engagement. Like last year, we opened an embassy office in Mogadishu, which is a branch office to our embassy in Nairobi. And Håkon Svane, my good colleague sitting there, he is our attaché in Mogadishu, which is also a a sign of our dedication to continue to engage in Somalia. But in the same time, of course, to give funds to a project, you need to feel that it's a credible project, and you need to feel that there are responsible stakeholders able to achieve results and good results. And now we are, of course, discussing with this mess that we are in now in the country, is Somalia a good project to support right now? As we also discussed earlier today with Håkon and Halima, I mean, the example of Afghanistan showed us that there are very strong limitations to what the international community can achieve if we don't have a responsible and legitimate government and authorities. So I think that there is a real concern. But also we need to remember that Somalia is on a completely different place today than it was when Mukhtar was working in Mogadishu 10, 12 years ago. And they were fighting with Al-Shabaab just around the corner in Mogadishu. So we also must not lose the perspective that there has been important progress made by the Somali stakeholders first and foremost, and also supported by the international community. But these elections, like Halima described, they have really created a mess of everything, and they have set the country back, I think, quite a lot. And I started in my position 1.5 years ago, and I must say that to follow this election process, this period has been like being on a very scary roller coaster. And I feel that we are still up in the air, and we haven't landed. But of course, we hope that something good can come out of such a bad process. I mean, sometimes bad things leads to good things, so we can hope that this will also lead to a better situation. There is an urgency, and I think that many Somali stakeholders haven't really realized how urgent the situation is, and the consequences if there is not a president and a new government in place within short time, because the debt relief process with the IMF and the World Bank, they have some deadlines coming quite soon. If they don't have a new government in Somalia, then the whole program risks being cancelled. And then, I mean, to work on development in Somalia without that will be so much more difficult.
And the time limit is May?
There is, I'm not sure if that, maybe Håkon, maybe you know if it's...
one of the time limits is in May, 17 May.
17 May, yeah.
They can make it.
Yeah.
Genuine, they can make it.
If they're genuine, maybe, yeah, they can make it. And I don't know if there is really a credible process, and we see that they are very soon going to make it. Maybe there is some flexibility. I don't know, but it's urgent that this program is not cancelled. It will take many years to get the country back to the same level if that happens. We need to continue to support and to engage in Somalia the same way as we have done the past 10 years. We need to see that there is a political will of the new elected government and the new elected president to really deal with the main challenges in the country, and to provide that there is a will to prioritize services to the people. I mean, one of the main the urgent tasks the new government will have to deal with is the drought situation, where, as our moderator described, there is a really bad situation in Somalia. 700,000 people have been displaced during this drought period, and 40% of the population is in need of food assistance. So, and all this, and this assistance to provide for all these people, it doesn't exist. So the government must show that it really prioritizes to help the people. It will be a real pity if the people in Somalia experience Al-Shabaab as a more responsible humanitarian actor than their government. That shouldn't happen. I think that also after the elections, and that is one of my main focus areas, is the issue of reconciliation. And I think that everyone now is traumatized by the conflict, the level of conflict that has come out of this election process. And those actors who are now competing and fighting each other, they need to cooperate and come together after the elections to work on the big issues that Somalia needs to work with. There's also a need for reconciliation more on the grassroots level to deal with the pasts between the clans, also with the climate change and the increased lack of resources and the drier weather. There is a need to focus, and I think that is both on the Somali stakeholder side, but also on the international side. We should focus more on reconciliation and conflict resolution between the actors we are working with. We should only focus on state building and believe that it will kind of solve the conflicts will solve itself. When it comes to the big political issues that must be dealt with, Halima mentioned the constitution. To be able to finalize the constitution, you need to have a much better cooperation between the federal government and the member states. So there also you have to establish good mechanisms for dialogue. And the issue of Somaliland is there. What should be the status of Somaliland? It should be solved before our constitution is finalized, I assume. And the coming elections, the democratization process. Do 4 years from now have another round of these indirect elections? I think that very few people want that. At least that's what I hope. And then you have, of course, the big challenge of Al-Shabaab. That's a big challenge for the international community, that we are supporting a lot of things and a lot of projects around in the districts, but to a very limited degree are we allowed to go out and really visit the projects and meet the people. There is a quite clear disconnect between both the international community and the people on the ground, but also maybe between the political elite in Somalia and the people on the ground. And it's partly due to the security situation, of course, that big parts of the country is inaccessible for us. And when we travel, we have to go with very strong security, and it's a limitation, of course. How to deal with Al-Shabaab? Can you beat them by only military means? I believe maybe my colleague Stig will also talk about that. It seems like it's difficult. Can you talk to them? I don't know, but also in that case, if you're going to try to talk to them, there is a need to have a legitimate government, because if you have a negotiation table, if potentially you have Al-Shabaab on one side of the table, who shall be on the other side? You need someone who kind of represents the state. And as we see now, there are no one who actually represents the state in Somalia. So, I mean, we hope that we will see a new spirit after the elections. The first 2 years will be really important because after that you will approach new elections and things will be difficult again, most likely. But the first 2 years, if we see a change, if we see a spirit, I think and I hope that the international community will continue to be there for Somalia. But if we're going to continue with this level of conflict and mess, I think that there might be other countries that will attract our money and our engagement and focus, unfortunately. So that's the reality we are dealing with. The international community, we cannot solve Somalia's problems. I feel that sometimes when I speak to the Somali stakeholders, they say that you have to solve this. The international community have to solve this because we cannot solve it. The Somali stakeholders are not able to solve it, they say. So you have to do it, but we can't do it. It's impossible. We can support, but there needs to be a local drive behind it.
Okay. Mukhtar Aynashe, I introduced you as a political analyst and former national security advisor for the President Sharif. But you are also connected to the University of Oslo and has written articles and papers on Al-Shabaab and clan dynamics, among other subjects. And you are sitting there with your laptop. And we are very excited to hear the news from Mogadishu. So what does Mogadishu say tonight?
Thank you very much for the...
Can you please have the mic?
Introduction. I feel honored to be sitting, sharing the stage with Halima, Heidi, and Professor Stig Al-Hansen. For the last couple of years, I was actually targeting some of the times with my criticism towards Halima, and because she was on the other side, but we are still friends and continues to be friends. You were in, in the game. I was in the opposition, and he's writing quite a lot. And sometimes maybe I left. He said something that's not was not very, pleasant. But in any way, right now, what we're hearing from Mogadishu is that the MPs have finally decided to break their iftar, and they are eating, and they will continue to make. They are. Saying that they will elect the speaker and the 2 deputies. So that's basically what I'm looking at here.
This week or tonight?
Tonight, yes. Oh. So most probably we will have some results later in the day, later in the evening. There is a saying that's been attributed to Albert Einstein. I don't know whether he actually said it or whether it's just something else. But it is said that insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting different results. What I mean with that is the fundamental issues in Somalia will not change, whether there is a new president, whether there is a new prime minister, or whether there is a new government. The reason is that the Somali state has never been viable, in my opinion, and it has been economically and politically dependent on foreigners, and current election will not change anything, because like I said, the actors will still be the same, whether there is Sheikh Sharif, Hassan Sheikh, Farmaajo, Hassan Khair, whoever Mukhtar Aynash becomes president. It will not change the political dynamics and the political reality on the ground, unfortunately. There will be same policies or lack their policies. Al-Shabaab will continue to be a threat to Somalia, both in terms of security and politics, and it will continue to destabilize the country for many years to come, unless, like Heidi was saying earlier, that there is some kind of solution, whether there is a direct political talks with them, whether it's defeated militarily, which I will leave for Professor Stig Al-Hansen perhaps to talk about. He's an expert on those issues. And the international community will continue to impatiently try to force change in Somalia, which will not help. In fact, it's counterproductive, because as you have seen, for the last the first 3 years of Farmaajo's presidency, the international community were, banging the drums for Farmaajo and Hassan Ali Khair, the former prime minister, and the U.S. ambassador Yamamoto, the UN representative there, and also, some people at here in our country, Norway now, were, saying a lot of positive things on those guys, even though they were actually destroying the fundamental institutions in the country, and Hassan Khair and Farmaajo were showing tendencies of dictatorship, and they were creating their own militias. They were destroying the parliament, and the upper house of the parliament, the Senate, was completely marginalized. And I do not believe that the international community really understands the fundamental political dynamics in the country. And even though they're trying to help Somalia, but they're actually doing a lot of destructive things. Because again, there is an English saying that says you can take a horse to the water, but you cannot make him drink. Solution is, like Heidi was saying, must come from the Somalis. The internationalists can lead us or to the Somalis and say, here is some certain things we can help you to solve, but fundamentally Somalis have to solve their own problems, and that is one thing. Second thing is, I will come back to a couple of other things, but I would like to talk first and foremost, a couple of challenges that are facing Somalia. Number one, Twitter is interrupting me all the time. There is a political fragmentation in the country. What I mean with that is, the federal system helping Somalia to get some level of political stability, but at the same time, it's creating a lot of problems. We see, like, for example, state presidents traveling to foreign countries and getting in agreements with foreign countries. Like, Vietnam president was there a couple of years ago to China and made agreements in contravention with the federal institution, because some of the core competencies of the federal government is defense, national security, immigration, and so on and so forth. There are also fragile institutions. For example, you might remember in Belgium, there was no government for several years, but the country was functioning. And the banks were open, electricity was still on, you could get water from the taps, buses were running. But that cannot happen in Somalia, unfortunately, because there are no institutions there. And then there is a weak security and defense, force. There is no military to speak of. I mean, you see now presidential candidate has his own little army. Every time the prime minister, the president, they disagree, there are clan militias in the militia streets. The threat of Al-Shabaab we already spoke about, and then hostile neighbors in Kenya and Ethiopia will continue to destabilize Somalia, directly or indirectly. And then there is the geopolitics. Somalia's location is both a curse, but it is also a blessing, and it depends how you use it, because that is something we can perhaps talk about later. Then there is also environmental degradation and also climate change. Mass urbanization, people who were farming and doing, livestock. Remember, Somalia's fundamental economics are based on livestock and agriculture, at least traditionally, whether it's exporting live animals or whether it was exporting like bananas, mangoes, and other things. Now almost 99% of what Somalia's consumer products are imported. But at the same time, there is no foreign exchange income coming to Somalia. So how can you really, revive the economy when you have the so much, surplus in terms of import? Because if you don't have cash in your pocket, you can't buy anything. It's exactly what we experience every day. And then you have excessive, unsustainable dependency on foreign aid. Every Somali you talk to, they're talking about what can the international community, do for us. I think what they should think about is what, John F. Kennedy said in 1963. Think about what you can do for your country, not what your country can do for you. And that is one thing which I believe the Somali should actually get a good lesson from. And then there is also this Somalia fatigue in the world. The world is fed up with Somalis and Somalia because people and Somalis have failed to solve their own differences. And all the time, 19 different conferences were held in the world, for the last 20, 30 years. All of them trying to, solve the Somali problem. And it didn't help. And then you have, so my point is, in terms of challenges facing Somalia, there are no quick fixes. So international community must be patient with Somalis. They must allow the Somalis to, walk through their problems and help them, in terms of, financial security, and other issues. But the idea of simply take a focus in approach which most international communities have, saying, do you meet the prime minister? Yes. Do you meet with the president? Yes. Do you go to this meeting? No, it doesn't help. So there must be a lesson for all of us there. I will come back to the opportunities and also the way forward, and also perhaps a little bit later on Somalia and Norway relations, because I belong to both issues. But I will leave you to that. One example I will give you, which will also give you more big picture, is like Senator Abdi Hashi Abdullahi was elected yesterday as the new Speaker of the Upper House, the Senate. He was there for 5.5 years. Now the question is, what can he do differently now that he couldn't do for the last 4.5 years? So that is the situation in Somalia. Whoever comes the president will face the same challenges, and nothing will change in the short term, unfortunately.
So, Mukhtar, you are very pessimistic in a way, because you are telling us that it really doesn't matter.
No, I like to, put, some ideas.
Does it matter who will become the new president?
Yeah, actually, in the short term, it will not help at all because, like, the same political actors will be there. All these people running now for president, for prime minister, those who are in regional governments, they will be there. International community will still be here. I will still be here criticizing whichever government comes in office. So, fundamental issues will not go away. Yes, I'm very pessimistic. Yes.
What do you say? Do you share that view? Are you as pessimistic? No?
I'm not.
What do you say?
I'm not pessimistic, but first of all, I came here to talk only why election is not happening and how can we change for the election. But now we are discussing the whole situation of Somalia, which is another topic.
Okay.
And I was not prepared for that. But what I can say is we are not hopeless, we are pessimists, and if you are running for president, if you win, you have to come with a change. If you are not coming with a change, so then why are you running? You are running because what I said before, you just want to get money and attention. But it has to change. Somalia is not desperate. If you look in the business area, how it's booming, Somalia is one of the countries which has the best communication in the world, and we have business everywhere. The business people are connected, whether they are different clients or whether they are same clients. They just need to have and to follow to respect and adopt what they agree. We have a constitution. We have to go with that constitution. If there are some loops for that constitution, we must correct. We must be serious. Somalis are not serious. Some of the politicians are not serious. Some Somalis who are outside of the country, like Al-Shabaab, they are sitting here, they have their food, their kids are not starving, but they know how to criticize Somali. They don't have a solution. They don't come with correcting Somalia and contributing. We must put aside everything. Somalia is a rich country, and it can come out if the Somalis come together. Thanks international community, they supported us a lot. There are some mistakes we can correct, whether it's international community or whether a Somali. Yes, Al-Shabaab is there, and we have 30,000 of AMISOM military with well-equipped with army. And we have how many Somali military, which I don't know the number really. They are a big number. They are well-trained. And Al-Shabaab, maximum, they are 5,000 people.
And now we will talk about Al-Shabaab.
Yeah. So but he mentioned it. I wanted to mention. So we must be pessimists and find the way that we can correct the mistakes that we are doing ourselves.
Okay, thank you. I was kind of asking for that, but I didn't really want the confrontation. But now it's there, and that's fine. Stig Jarle Hansen, professor at NMBU University. Just a short story. I met at Entebbe airport a young man back in 2017. He was studying international politics at Harvard University, frequently topping the list of the best university in the world. When he heard I was a Norwegian, he began to talk about an outstanding scholar and the book Al-Shabaab in Somalia, highly recommended by his professor in East Africa politics at Harvard. Stig Jarle, you wrote that book back in 2013. We are glad we are glad that you can join us. So, Al-Shabaab in Somalia today. What kind of situation would you point out?
Sverre Tom, it's an honor to have known you for so long, but I would rather also use the chance to comment upon the discussion between that we had here previously, if you allow me to, because I think it's a very important topic. And I'm in the strange position that I'm positive as Halima, but agree most with Aynasher's description of the political reality in Somalia. You know, the Somali strengths for me are many. They are many. You know, one is you have a booming private enterprise sector, as you said. Two, there's amazing things going on in Somalia. Look at the Somali press. There's a sleeping war going on. If you want to have, you know, good opinions that are heavily engaged in discussion, well, don't go to the Ethiopian press. Don't go to the Djiboutian press. Don't go to the Tanzanian press. It's a little bit better. Don't go to the Eritrean press, but go to the Somali press. You know, that you have real discussions. There's a lot of corruption, but you have real discussions. And there's a democratic tradition there that I think we should cherish. And what is one of the achievements of Somalia the last 12 years? Well, the opposition is winning the selection processes. Do Ethiopia do that? No. Do Eritrea do that? No. Do Kenya do that? Sometimes, but not very often. Do Tanzania do that? Not really. So there's a lot of advantages, and that's why I really want to stress that for me also the problem here has been maybe not decentralization, but centralization around the current president. And he has to bear a lot of blame for the extension. And that's where perhaps I do disagree with both Aynasha and Halima, because I do see the federal structure as a checks and balance. And what is very damaging for us in Norway is to build up structures that goes against checks and balance, to build small Putins at the Horn of Africa. We see what he's doing now in Ukraine. We don't need any more of that type of leaders. You know, it's tempting to build up strong central institutions that carries leaders that centralize. Somalis, you have one. His name was Siad Barre. How did that end up? Not very good. So I would actually suggest that the federal level is a good thing, potentially. There's faults with it, but it needs to be addressed. And secondly, I'm a little bit afraid of benchmarks here. That's where I kind of agree with Aynasha. You know what? This process is going to be messy. Why? Because you need to settle the balance of power between the various politicians. You need to settle basically constitutional habits for the future. And for the Norwegian audience here, I happen to study history in the long past. You know, our process was simply very messy from 1814 to 1844, you know, with peasants trying to storm the capital in 1817 because they didn't want to pay taxes, etc., etc. The great Torvslaget in Oslo in 1844, it was messy. So it's better that you take time, you develop the processes, rather than the international community setting on benchmarks over and over again, so that you actually have a very rushed process, and maybe then you get the central government that looks a little bit like Ethiopia, Eritrea. Is that what we want? I don't hope so, because I do have higher expectations for the amazing Somali culture that I learned over time. And here is maybe where we need to discuss the role of foreign aid also. I'm very happy when I heard you discuss service delivery, you know, because that's very close to my heart. What has happened over and over again, I would say since 1989, it's an old tradition. Where 89, 88, you have a large donor influx of money coming into Somalia. And very often institution building has been detached of the service delivery. And that means that you can be a Somali politician, you can be a Somali civil society activist indeed, without having any constituency whatsoever. You don't need to, because you can have foreign money. What is important is that you write the right project application. You don't need to care about your own population all the time. So it's a kind of perverse system, and that's where we have to think very carefully how we spend the money. And then it's close to my heart, so I really am a little bit sorry that I didn't talk much about the Al-Shabaab. But what I would say here is that I don't see the situation with the Al-Shabaab as having a military solution that is close to the strategies that are deployed today. It's only two options for the Al-Shabaab, and we should be clear on that, because we've been told that they are on the verge of disappearing now since 2007, and they haven't disappeared. In fact, they're richer than ever. So the two options is basically produce enough local security so that they cannot be able to tax in the countryside or tax the big companies when they move through the countryside. That's alternative number one. And that comes back to service delivery. Then you have to have a police that actually delivers for the local population. Not the police where you have donors from Minnesota coming in and wanting to design exactly the police department they have there. And then the Somalis locally will be happy. And they will have an organizational structure that doesn't produce anything on the ground. And that's something I've seen over and over again. I'm a little bit annoyed with that exercise. So you need to have something that is produced on the ground, security that is produced on the ground. And the alternative is negotiations. Those two are the only options here. You know, we're not going to defeat them. They are not the priority of the Americans anymore. That's China and Russia. They're not the priorities of the Europeans anymore. That's actually ending up being Russia. China is reluctant to engage. Who is going to help there fight them? And well, when the United States was engaged, they weren't that successful in fighting them anyway. So we have two options. What we need to do in Somalia is take things slowly, ensure that we have checks and balance, and ensure that we draw upon the amazing positive cultural traits that are there in Somali culture, which is sometimes rather astonishing, actually. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
I agree with Professor Steve Hansen that, in terms of Al-Shabaab, there are only two options. Unfortunately, I don't see that the fairest option of actually providing enough local security to defeat Al-Shabaab is being possible. That's not going to happen for the next, at least foreseeable future. So the only options, from my perspective, is to have a real political negotiations with Al-Shabaab. But the question is, like Heidi was saying earlier, Al-Shabaab is here, but where is the legitimate central, powerful central government that can speak on behalf of the entire government? We don't have. I gave you a little bit of sort of a bad medicine, but I will, when I get the opportunity, I will tell you that there are actually opportunities in Somalia that can move the country forward. So I will hope I will be able to say like few things later on.
Okay, this is very interesting actually. But let's go back to the election system and what's happening these days for a while. Are we sure that the one man, one vote is the perfect system for Somalia?
One person, one vote.
Yeah, one person.
Not one.
You include the women. But you are sure that that is the way to go for Somalia? Why is that?
We are not the first one that is creating one person, one vote in the world. It's happening all over the world. And what they say is the election is part of the democratization. So you have democratic election, you have a democratic system in your country. So it is not a question to ask that an election one person, one vote will help Somalia. Yes, it will, and we need it, and we have to start it. Whether it's slowly or whether it's fast. Election, it's necessary.
Are you agreed on that? I mean, is that one person, one vote the perfect solution for Somalia?
Yeah, I do believe so. It has been happening for the last almost 10, 15, 20 years in part of Somalia, in northern Somalia, what's called Somaliland. Puntland conducted a very successful regional elections, which was like based on one person, one vote. And I think it is Somalis, I think culturally are democratic. You know, Somalis used to come under an acacia tree and discuss issues. I think there is a democratic culture in Somalia that can be fostered in the long run, and I think one man, one person, one vote is the best option for Somalia.
And we used to have.
Yeah.
We used to have one person, one vote election.
That's 50 years ago.
Yeah, 50 years ago, and it produced a democratic government. But unfortunately, the military came and they took over the country. But like one person, one vote is the solution, because people will have the right to choose who they want to choose their leadership. And if they do bad, second time they cannot go there and seek for election.
Yeah, I don't have a doubt in my body that one person, one vote, it's correct for Somalia, and it is there for Somalia. But I also want to remind that, firstly, a democracy, it's more than one person, one vote. You can do that in many different ways. You can have one electoral circle area like Israel is doing. You can have the federal system of Switzerland. There's a lot of ways to do that, and it's a content that needs to be there. You know, it's not fetishism. That's very important. Democratic fetishism is something that I would say, I don't know if you agree, that maybe we saw in Ethiopia at times where they have elections and you have 80% majorities sometimes, and do we believe that that was real elections? So, not really. So it's possible to have these popular elections like an exercise, and if you don't fill up the institutions, if you don't have the checks and balance, it's kind of pretend democracy. And that's very important that we avoid in all places. And sometimes benchmarks from the international community can have a negative effect there. You know, you look for the fetishism rather to look for the contents of the institutions.
Now I wanted to just add to what Stig Jarle is saying about one person, one vote is not enough to have a democratic, a credible democratic process necessarily. I mean, in Somaliland, we really have encouraged, and we have been very supportive and impressed by the way they have conducted elections. We saw the last parliamentary elections last year. They seem to be quite free and fair, and it was an achievement really. But not one woman was elected into the Somaliland parliament.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, you really need to work on the political participation of women, and it seems to be no way around to having a quota. And I also think that if I mean, even though maybe benchmarks and deadlines and all these things are counterproductive, I think there is a need a little bit to sometimes stress that we are stressing a little bit, because things have a tendency to take very, very long time. And if you're going to have a credible one person, one vote election next time in 2026, I think it's important that they start to prepare that immediately after the elections now, and not wait for 3 years and then start.
But some years ago, they promised that today's election should be one person, one vote as well.
And first of all, election, I agree, democratization is only about the election, one person, one vote, but there are several tiers about the democratization, and one person, one vote is one of them. Having one person, one vote, because you are building the government based on that. So it is very, very important. In Somaliland election, we have seen that election has happened. There's a democracy in Somaliland that is going on, and their government is built by one person, one vote. Unfortunately, there was no woman elected because it was the modality of election that they took, because there are different modalities. If they would have took a proportional representation, the woman would have come, because there will be a list. If that political party doesn't put the candidate list woman, the commission would not have accepted, and they will not be participating in the election. What we planned was that proportional representation, closed list, the political party will bring their list, and every 3 persons have to be women. Otherwise, we would not have accepted. So women would have come in that way. And we will reach almost 30% of women if we follow that. This election, one person, one vote election, was not prepared only for the last few years. We have been working for the last 6 years The only mistake which was happened was they delayed intentionally the electoral law. The electoral law was prepared, was ready, and the Council of Ministers was supposed to vote for that and then send to the Parliament. But it stayed, the electoral law was staying in the office of the Prime Minister almost 1 year. They were not sending to the Parliament. And there were reasons because, as Ainash was saying, the first 3 years, President Farmaajo and Prime Minister Hassan Khair were together, working together. And I am not saying the way that he said, but they have done a lot. The debt relief that we are talking of, the head he was talking, it came because of their hard work when they were together. And most of the international community really they worked hard on that. And we reached a position that most of the debt of Somalia could be could be accepted. Yeah. I'm sorry with my English because my background is Italian. I studied in Italia from elementary to my master, and I was trying to learn English lately, so sorry.
You're doing great.
But I think you understand me. I wish I can speak Somali or Italian.
But anyway, what you said was that the government actually shut down the process?
But the conflict between the president and the prime minister damaged a lot.
Okay, but why do you believe that it's possible the next 4 years? What kind of roadmap can you see?
That's what I have my possible options. I put the first point is Somali federal government and for Somali member state leaders must sign a charter to prioritize and support universal suffrage election. What we are planning is to have a big conference, inviting all the stakeholders and come with a roadmap. And that roadmap must be respected by the current government. And to start, as my colleague was saying, to start at first day to work on election project.
Do you think it's possible?
Is it possible? Yeah. Is it possible? If we are all genuine, if the interference of foreign governments stays, as he was saying, out. I'm not talking only the international community, but I'm talking specifically the neighboring country and the Arab countries. If they stay out of this, Somalia could have come together and work. Because even Somalis are divided among themselves to those, some are with Saudi, some are with Emirates, some are with Kenya, some are who has different interests. And that interest, they conflict each other.
But are you optimist when it comes to new election law for the next 4 years?
When it comes to
Please into the mic.
Sorry. When it comes to the political situation in Somalia or political realities in the country, I am not an optimist at all. But I would just like to say, just to put a little bit more, perhaps something positive into my this talk. I would just say.
Okay, then actually, then you have to be very brief, please.
When it comes to, for example, economic issues, there is a huge opportunity for Somalia and for Somalis to in the country. For example, there is an enormous natural resources in our oceans. You know, I was reading a report by an organization called Fisheries. It's called Fisheries Securities. There is a report they actually issued in 2014, and they said $3.7 billion of fish is actually looted from Somalia. And that money is 4 or 5 times bigger than the entire international community giving Somalia as an economic support. But unfortunately, and again, it comes back to my political pessimism, is that the Somali leaders are not talking about exploiting the natural resources. There is also another report by the World Bank Group, which I used to work for, by the way. They said 76% of the Somalis, the total Somali population, is actually only 90 kilometers from the sea, whether it's in the south, whether it's in the north, whether it's in the east. What that means is that Somalis, almost 76% of the Somalis could actually eat as lunch, even though rules are bad, food that has been caught in the ocean the same day. But Somalis are not thinking about that. They're actually begging foreigners, Norway included, for money. Why can't, fish in small communities, cooperatives, fisheries can produce? Somalis are now hungry, and Somali oceans are full of, food. So it doesn't make sense, And again, this is what makes me politically, pessimistic. And then in terms of opportunities, there is a young workforce in Somalia which could be used for development of the country. There is also, potential for economic development in terms of geopolitics. I spoke earlier about the fact that the geographical location of Somalia is both a blessing, but it's also, a curse. In terms of blessing, now we're talking about it could be used, Somali seaports, Somali, it could help international trade with Somalis, could earn a lot of money. Fortunately now, Ethiopia is going to engage in northern Somalia, in Berbera. There is also a seaport now they're building in the east, in Puntland. There's also another one in Hobyo. Mogadishu is there, hopefully, Kismaayo will also do the same. So there is a potential for economic development. And last point, which is also, in terms of remittance, there is a lot of, remittance coming from overseas, from Norway included. There are so many remittance companies in Greenland and Toyen. According to the World Bank Group, this is an old report, but they said over $1 billion is actually sent to Somalia directly, cash. Unfortunately, most of that money goes to Ethiopia and Kenya for card, but still there's a lot of money that actually in the Somalis benefit. So I am not saying economically Somalia I'm pessimistic about. In fact, I'm very optimistic about. But what I am very pessimistic about is the fact that there is no credible political leadership in Somalia. And unless Somalis speak themselves honestly, and stop talking about this NGO, international community, bullet points, and they come together and say, how can we resolve our problems? Nothing will happen. And that's what makes me keeping awake in the night. Thank you.
Yeah, please.
In 2019, I participated in a meeting with the federal member states and the president and prime minister. I think early 19 or end of 2018. And we had a minister official. That minister was well educated. He used to work at the World Bank, and he had Abdurrahman.
Hash, yes.
Hash.
We were at the same time at the World Bank, yes.
Now he is running as for a president. He was there in the conference. They were deciding and agreeing the sharing, the resource sharing, especially the fishing. And then he made a good speech, and he talks well points, and he said that even Somalia even doesn't need to look for a petroleum, to dig a petroleum. The fishery is enough for Somalia. We are rich, and we can get that resources. Two of the federal member states of president, they really condemned him. They say you are stopping our business because he stopped several foreign fishers to fish in the area.
Illegal fishing.
Illegal fishing. That the federal member president gave it the license. They gave the license. So two of the presidents, they standing and they condemned him, and they said, you are not a good person, you closed our resources, we don't want it. And after 2 weeks, he has been sacked by the minister, and they nominated someone else who doesn't have the same level of education for Hash. And what's happening in the NGOs to stop Somali resources? And I don't know how come that idea is giving the agriculture, the farmers, and the nomadic people who were raising goats and cows and camels Instead, they are giving cash money, $80, $40 cash money to survive. The nomadic people, they abandon their heads and they are in the cities now begging for that cash money. The agriculture is destroyed because of that. And now the nomadic also are destroyed. I was in Garowe last year and we had a meeting and I visited a farm. They were cultivating banana and grapefruit and watermelon. Then my background is agriculture. I did agriculture economy and rural development. So I was interested to see having Garowe, a farm. That was very interesting for me because Somalis, they were only cultivating in the two river sides, not the countryside. Then the guy, he made me a tour and I have seen that under the banana there was a lot of weeds growing. And I say, why don't you cut these weeds because they will divide the resources from the plant. Then he said, we don't have people to work because people, they get money, cash money from NGOs. So they rather stay their homes and get the money instead of working. So you see, it is a problem also that. So we need to think about how can we create opportunity, how can we come out with our own resources. I grew out a country that was exporting all the resources that they have, and it was importing minimum 50%. I think we were importing, but everything we were growing in Somalia. Now it's different. Everything is important. We don't export any.
Thank you. So now it's time for you, the audience, to address your questions to the panel. To do that, you have to come up to the stage and you have to present yourself, and you have 2 minutes to deliver a question, not more than 2 minutes. And it has to be a question at the end, not just speech. Okay? Please.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and I say hi to the panelists, to everyone. My name is Mohammed Hussein Gas. I hold a PhD degree in development research from OS, specializing in governance in the context of post-conflict states like Somalia. I have a commentary, but also maybe few questions. My comment is if we look Somalia, we cannot be pessimistic because I think being pessimistic means not knowing or not reflecting about the reality of Somalia for the last 20 or 30 years. If you look at politics, even there is a progress in the politics. Initially, it used to be undisputed between actors, political actors used to be sorted out through the barrel of gun. But then things moving. It is threats, political tensions, negotiations. But I do understand for international actors and money stakeholders that have invested in Somalia for so long, their patience is becoming quite thin. But then we should remember there has been a lot of progress. If we take the first transitional government built in Nairobi, it was well-dominated. Then things moving. But then I do acknowledge there is an issue of leadership. It's not all Somalis. This does not reflect about the Somalis, their culture, what they want. And it's not all Somalis that are correct, but it's the political actors. But then there's aspect of this blame that international actors also has to shoulder. Because I have been there in 2019, I have seen senior UN officials, I have seen many other stakeholders, and what they were saying, what they were doing was actually building up a very centralized system. When the country constitution, provisional constitution, is a federal, meaning, you have the regional states and you have the federal structure. And there is a framework. But instead of, channeling their support through that, based on the constitution, I don't know whether that was because of intimidation or whatever reasons or personal relationship. they actually channeled everything through a federal centralized system that was beyond the constitution. And what we have today is a result of that. For example, I had a meeting with the UN on some officials. In 2019, they were actually the ones calling, and they asked me, what do you think? One man, one vote. I say one man, one vote is impossible. Yeah, because of we have lost so much time. It's only 1 year left at that time to conduct. And then part of the country is controlled by Al-Shabaab. And they became very offensive, saying I was anti-democratic. What that tells us, they are not informed. There's a knowledge gap or I don't know. You know, they have, they are inside Havana, probably they have their people. But then, you know, knowing what happened and knowing what that means within the context of Somalia is totally different. So I don't blame them, but now, you know, they were forced after 1 year to even try to make the indirect election. So I think priority number one for international actors should be watching. I know it is tiresome. They should be watching. When next president and government comes, they should be watching their steps so that we do not get into the point where we have to scramble when the crises are so big and threaten the entire country and political stability. That's my comment. When it comes to few of the things that were mentioned by all, I almost know all of them, my friends or colleagues, even for Halima, I think, through the media. I think there has to be some sort of very pragmatic. I know the situation in Somalia is very confusing. Very pragmatic reflection and very general reflection. And I think regardless of what happened, international actors will be there for reasons that relate to the national security, to the issue of migration, to what a vacuum of disengagement could produce, because we had disengagement from 1995. And then what we had was Islamist and Al-Shabaab and all of these becoming emerging. Then when it comes to Somalia, whether Somalia is poor, I don't think Somalia is poor. We need policies, we need structures, we need to allow, you know, enough time to develop those policies and structures. But also leaders, we need to tell the leaders when they are wrong. I think I should stop there.
Yeah.
Although I would like to continue my comments and discussions with some of my
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Anyone want to comment on that?
There's one thing I disagree with Dr. Gas. Yeah, there is some development, political development in the country, you could say. But I went to Mogadishu first time in May 2009. And at that time, you know, the transitional federal government, which I was working for, was controlling the airport, the seaport, and Somalia. Actually, we were not controlling, but AMISOM was keeping us there. And anywhere in between were actually a foreign country, in the sense that we couldn't go out, we couldn't do nothing. And Sheikh Ahmed, the president whom I worked for 3.5 years, was there in Somalia. We were there. And there was an AMISOM soldier, a foreign soldier, protecting the president when he was going to his bathroom or his, wherever. And the same is happening 12 years later. So what kind of progress can we talking about? Yes, the political maturity of the Somali people has grown tremendously, because now people want a government. They know that the service delivery has to be there. They want the government to do something. But in terms of the actual political development on the ground, nothing much have changed. In terms of security, in terms of economic, what has the government done for the Somali people? None. They receive thousands and thousands of dollars each of them. Every single day, there are 275 MPs, 54 senators, and so many, ministers. I can't even tell you, 70 almost. They are actually a burden to the state, these people. If that money went directly to the Somali people, things would have changed. I mean, when I used to say to President Sheikh Ahmed, when you are appointing a minister, are you giving him a role to play, or are you simply giving him a position? I still can't tell. So, Dr. Gas, yes, there is some development, but the fact of the matter is, nothing much have changed. Maybe my expectation is a little bit too high. Maybe I've been drinking, soft drink is too long in Norway. I don't know. Maybe I've been having, spent too much time on Starbucks or somewhere else. I do not know. Maybe I read too many Norwegian newspapers. But what I am saying is, in terms of actual development, political development, nothing much have changed. Yes, I agree with, Professor Stig Jarle Hansen. In terms, there are certain, things that have changed a little bit. But
yes, it's good that you came first in 2009. I was there in 2005, and then I had to change guards at each district. Otherwise, my life was in danger. Unfortunately for me, I was there in 2006, and it was like heaven, to be controversial, under the Sharia court, because I could pass through the city. I was there.
Or maybe perhaps you are a little bit more here, Professor.
I was there in 2007, and then I was shot at 21st October Road. I think gas is, in the long run, in the short run, I kind of see your point. In the long run, I think Mohammed is correct. After all, the warlords are not shooting at each other. After all, the last front lines we had in Mogadishu was really in 2010, 2011. That's where the front lines disappeared. No, it's terror. It's bad with terror. I fully agree, and the Shabaab attacks. But I do really see this as a kind of progress. And you have all the talks before of presidential elections. And all the time we are talking, it's going to be violence, it's going to be violence. And very often it calms down. It's not the optimal results, but it ends up calming down. It's very, over the years, 2012, 2016, all the time it went down. So it's a repeated game, but it's also advantages, that the central state, the central government and the federal state didn't have an outright war. So I kind of see this as a kind of progress, but I do have sympathies with maybe a stronger phase of progress. Maybe I'm too patient. What I would say is again, sometimes progress also have to be slow. And let's look at Somaliland. We can maybe admit that Somaliland have reached quite far. Not that they have strong ideological parties, because it's very often clan-based as well. But the point being that Somaliland wasn't afraid of maybe delaying some of their electoral processes. They want to fill the institution with content. They want to fill the process with contents. They want to grow a kind of consensus before it took place. I know there's a lot of differences. I know Egal used a lot of money when he built up his structures. I know there's probably less clan divisions, also because it was a strong dominating central clan at times. But I think it's something to be said for this idea about search for consensus, accept that people are angry at each other, but as long as you settle it without violence, that's at least a kind of start. But I have great sympathies when you talk about filling up with service delivery. And, most of you would know that is very close to my heart.
Thank you. So my name is John Lovdal. I work for the Oslo Center. I have maybe 1.5 questions. So a little bit of a comment and then a question. So I thought it was very interesting when we also talked about Somaliland and the May election, about the way it was conducted, but also the outcome that there were no women elected. And I think there were 2 women councillors elected out of the 230 something local councillors. I think that engagement with gatekeepers for inclusion is very important, and one of them are political parties. And the role that political parties would have long term to work towards identifying candidates, build up candidates, but also address some of those structural challenges, and engagement with other informal institutions in the society would be important. So that was my half a comment. My question is about Somalia and the one person, one vote, democratization. How much is being supported to engage the ordinary citizen in those discussions? What does Somali want? And what can the international community do to support those conversations so that a political settlement also have input from citizens. So that was my question.
Thank you very much. So the man and the woman in the streets, can they participate in the process? That was one of his questions.
First of all, this indirect election, it became a good civil engagement, because everybody or every Somali citizen is talking about how it was bad, this indirect election, and they are saying we don't want to see again this indirect election. Yes, and the civic education and civil engagement was not as much as we needed, but it was tried. It was tried, and there was a lot of meeting with the civil society, with Somali people. As a commission, we went and all the federal member states, and every federal member state, we visited 6 districts to mobilize and engage people. And we registered, we have all the documents, and you can see how people were excited and how people, they want one person, one vote election. And I'm not saying that we covered all what we needed, but another main point is in Somalia, and it has to start these things from the schools. It has to be educated, the young people, about election, about democratization, about how the institutions are very important to form. And one of the big issues that we are lacking is building strong institutions, that we are lacking really. But I'm not pessimist as Ainashe. Ainashe is here, he's in Oslo, he can wake up anytime he wants, he can drive the car anywhere he wants, or he can take metro. I enjoyed today walking with help in Oslo. I can't get that opportunity in Mogadishu to walk everywhere, peaceful. And she was asking me, are you tired? Can we relax? And I was saying, no, I'm really enjoying it. Although I'm fasting and my energy is weak, but I was enjoying walking. And he get used to that. But since 2009, we reached a lot. We did a lot of progress. Really, we did a lot of progress. And one thing that I want to tell Somalis and my friend foreigners, the election was not started the last 2 years of this government. We started from the beginning. And the international community are here supporting us to do that. And my friend, he was there. He supported us registering the political parties. It was not the last 2 years. It was long time ago. The work for election, it started long time ago. And we prepared every year. Every week, one day, we used to have a meeting with the international community in Halane, talking about how could we do the election. Every 3 months, we were reporting to the parliament, and that's one of our mandate to do it. We were reporting the steps that we are doing and what we need and what we are lacking. Everything has been worked except delaying the electoral law. Even with the international community, we have a mutual accountability that we were sitting together and telling we are doing this month, the other month we are doing this. Everything was followed by the book. Huh? The mistake came from the conflict between the president and prime minister and holding up the electoral law, because without electoral law, we cannot do an election.
Stig Arne, you have a short comment? And then we have to say
I
stuff.
think it's an elementary you agree with me. I think it's quite a real problem when you have an election that has emerged in Somaliland, and it probably will emerge in Mogadishu and in the south later. And that is, as a female, you face, well, if you want to be a political candidate in Somaliland, you have two choices. You know, you can be a businessman and have a lot of money, or you can gather funds from your clan.
Yeah.
And that is probably harder from a female who is very often intersected in between clans. So if you have a mature party system, a more mature party system like in Somaliland, I'm not sure if this works in Mogadishu, it would have been a good idea to put up a pool to fund female campaigning really within the party frame, so that you don't depend that much on the clan for the funding. That's just a tool.
Since we have the special envoy and the ambassador Svana here, I think one thing, for example,
With the mic, please.
Norwegian government could do for Somalia are spending more resources, not on the political side, but on the economic side, like for example food and like education, health, and all these things. I know there are, for example, because of EU laws and others, there are hundreds of Norwegian fishing boats idling half of the year. Instead of for example, foreign illegal fishing, perhaps Norway could send some of those and they could fish and Somalis could benefit.
I think you have to talk to the Charge afterwards, because that's all for now, folks. Big hand for the panel. And thank you very much, and stay home and have a nice end of the Ramadan to you.